the mobility has developed enormously in Europe and other countries, largely thanks to the Erasmus program, which is a European Union project. Whereas the development we're talking about is something that started a long time ago, because it started in 1989, but then the so-called Bologna process started in 1999. So it's 24 years now that this area, which consists of 49 countries, has changed. All the countries have agreed to change their education systems so that they're compatible, and this allows the mobility to take place, not only within European Union countries, but also with the Erasmus program countries and outside Europe too, because this macro area, this European higher education area, this big area, is a macro region in the higher education world. So our area can be connected with other macro areas like Latin America, the Asian area, the Central Asian area, the African Union, and so forth. And we can communicate. We can tell what studies are being carried out and how and with what results. And this makes it possible to recognize people's studies. This is really important. But this work has been going on now in the Bologna process area for 24 years. And it resulted in the complete change of the structures of most European higher education systems in order to go to the 3 cycles, to use European credit transfer and accumulation system, which we call ECTS, which is a credit system that our systems didn't have before. And the fact that we have these tools, and also quality assurance, according to agreed principles, the European standards and guidelines, is very, very important, because it means you can trust your partners. And if they certify that a student has done something, why then you know that that's the way it is. And you can also understand more or less how it would fit into your own system. And let me say, I'm a witness to this. Before we did this work, each country had a system that was so different from that of its neighbors that there was no connection. So let's say that the work of the Bologna process, the European higher education area, the ECTS has made it possible for mobility to take place on the scale that it takes place today, which is millions of students. I think that one of the most important things that a student or a person can do is to have the experience of seeing the world from a different perspective. So being able to be mobile, going to another country, studying there, realizing that people are thinking different things, they're seeing things from a different point of view. Well, that is what really opens the mind. And once you know that there are 2 ways of thinking about things, then you know that there are lots of ways. And once you know that there are lots of ways, you have the world in front of you, because you can see it from so many different angles. Critically, I mean, you can understand why people are looking at such and such from a certain direction, and because you have perspective. So to me, if you think about higher education, or any education, or just living, this is one of the most important things that can happen. And since students can go to other universities, they can live in other countries, they can see how people do things, if necessary on Zoom, if possible, their own body going there, well, that is a huge contribution to international understanding and to the development of the human spirit. And we can also say that these systems, are very important for being sure that higher education is compatible with the needs of personal civic life and the labor market. Because having universities living in their own little world and maybe teaching people things that are of no use, that's no good. So one part of this is to be inclusive, which means having students from every part of society, of having them have a good experience, a supported experience in the university, but also coming out of the university with credentials and with competences that will allow them to take up a place in the world of economy, of family, of civic activities, and so forth. So to me, these are the most important things. That programs for staff mobility, staff exchange, are also very, very useful because, of course, if professors go and can teach in another university, this is a way of internationalizing even without the student mobility. Professors learn too, because when they're there, they understand that their colleagues are doing something different in a different way. They have to fit in. They have the opportunity of really seeing things on the ground and not just in an email or something. However, I would say that one problem is that professors usually, or very often, let's put it that way, usually use this as a personal experience, as something that's good for them. And they don't always, at least in an aware, open fashion, share with their colleagues. Whereas students, it's much more likely that they will share with the other students what happened and what they understood. So we have to try to be sure that professors too share their experience and make it, put it into common with their colleagues and use it some way in their home university, not just as something to add to their curriculum. Yeah. I was actually born in a small place at the mouth of the Columbia River, which is between Oregon and Washington in the United States of America. I grew up, though, in California, in Southern California, and I was among, well, in the group of the first American students who the American Field Service, and I can tell you about that, decided to send to Europe to study in European high schools. So I was 16. I went to Italy on a ship. Can you believe that? I cannot, but I did. I was 16 and went to study in Rimini. And I was thrilled by Italy. I thought it was a wonderful place. I wanted to go back. And when I returned to the US, I had to complete my upper secondary school. And I found out that to enter Italian university, you had to have 2 years of American university because the Italian university was at a higher level. So I went to Berkeley for 2 years, and then I went to Milan, and I received my degree from the State University of Milan, and I became a ministerial fellow at the Superior Normal School of Pisa, which is the creme de la creme in Italy, in 1971. In 1975, I became a professor of the University of Pisa, where I taught Renaissance and early modern history until I had to leave because of my age. But in the meantime, I had started this adventure of higher education reform, and I guided about 20 European projects, including the largest one ever financed by the European Commission for the Humanities, which was a history research network, including 31 countries and 180 researchers. So I would say that I've had a real adventure in my life, and that this seeing things from the perspective of different countries is a fabulous experience, which I hope everyone will be able to have. With one other person who's here, Robert Wagenaar, we started developing the ECTS in 1989. So that's 34 years ago now. And we developed ECTS, which came before the Bologna process. And somehow it was the way that the countries and people understood how different the systems were, because we tried to develop this credit system when European countries did not have credits except a very few. Finland, for example, had them, and the UK had them. Other countries did not. It was a complete revolution. But we had to figure out a way of making it possible to transfer people from their record, to have them study in another country and be able to understand what they did. And as we worked on it, we came up with this idea that there had to be, we could say that more or less somehow 1 year of of study in each country, we would just make it equal. And we would divide it up into 60 units. This is sort of Sumerian or something, 60 as the basis. And then we had in each country, we had the pilot universities that developed this project, amongst which the University of Pisa. And we would make a catalog of all our courses and try to imagine how many credits that would be in 1 year to make up 60 in the end. And so we started out that way. And this is how we were able to organize the mobility in the 90s. But it also showed us how different the systems were. And so some countries, you've probably heard of the Sorbonne Declaration, or maybe you have, or maybe you haven't, I don't know. But that's the time that 4 countries came together to decide that there should be a common structure, bachelor, master. There should be a credit system, such as ECTS. There should be international cooperation to make the systems compatible. And so then they called for a meeting in Bologna in June of 1999 and invited countries that wanted to join this to come. And they were very surprised, but 29 countries came. So this was much larger than the European Union at that time, which was, we have the economic community, 11 countries, 15. Anyway, there were 29 countries there. And they signed the Bologna Declaration, which says that they would make these radical changes in their systems to cooperate and to be able to improve the relevance, the quality of their education systems by making mobility possible for their students and also after graduation for recognition and so forth. The Bologna Declaration is the foundation of the Bologna process, which some people still talk about applying. But these very key commitments do need to be applied. That is, using the description of the level of a bachelor, of a master, of a doctorate. This is our qualifications framework. Using the credits that include learning outcomes and student workload as a basis for quantifying and determining the contents and the competences that are given by each course module or each program. The Lisbon Recognition Convention that implies that then there are agreements on recognition and the methodology, which are basically very similar to the recent UNESCO Global Recognition Convention. The diploma supplement, to say what's in a diploma, and quality assurance, according to ENCA, which is the organization that came out of the Bologna process of the of the European quality assurance agencies, among which you're the Romanian ones. Aracis, for example. And let's say that these tools, these developments are going forward insofar as the Bologna area, the Bologna Follow-up Group is the organism that keeps things going between ministerial conferences, because there's only consensus of ministries to make decisions and go forward. And this happens at the ministerial conferences every 2 or 3 years. The Bologna Follow-up Group has a large number of working groups, task forces, coordination groups, such as the one where we're meeting here today, which carry on its work on different themes, such as the social dimension, the fundamental values, monitoring what's going on, learning and teaching, just imagine that's important. That's important too. And another working group for me, two of which I am co-chaired now. One is the Bologna Implementation Coordination Group, which looks at peer support methods for all the countries to implement all the reforms in a correct and compatible way. And the Coordination Group on Global Policy Dialogue, so that we try to build and make stronger and more important the relationship with the other macro regions, all the countries of the world. So it's really very exciting. And I think It's quite amazing what has been accomplished. It's also quite amazing what still has to be accomplished. So we are working, and when I say it's a process means that it moves forward. For me, having the very basic things, such as the qualifications frameworks, the proper use of credits, and a quality assurance recognition, these basic things need to all be in place, because if these are really in place, why then all the process of mobility and connection and sharing of the work is easy. And sometimes what we do see today in practice is that even amongst countries that have adopted all the commitments of the Bologna process, maybe in their country it's been done in a slightly different way. So then they say, oh, this country, whereas it should be all smooth. That doesn't mean that someone can just say, well, I now have, here we are in the Agricultural and Veterinary University, I have a certificate from there, and now I want to go practice in the country. There has to be a moment in which whatever credential or curriculum the person has is seen and evaluated. But according to the principles both of Lisbon and the UNESCO Global Recognition Convention, the burden of the proof now is on the receiving institution or country to say, no, you are not allowed to do this. Otherwise, you have to. Whereas before it was more, well, so who are you? Well, I don't know whether we can do anything about this. Whereas today you have to say, yes, of course, unless I can find a substantial difference. But the burden of proof is on the recognizer, not on the person that asks to be recognized. This is a huge change. And of course, it's only possible because the systems are now so much more compatible than they were 35 years ago.